Chapter 61, A War Between the Godkin. Odin's suspicion was immediately aroused. Tyr came under great pressure. He only now realized that he was surrounded by countless guards, with their weapons drawn. Odin's unfriendly gaze seemed to stare daggers into his back. I didn't mean it like that. Are you telling me I'm too stupid to understand what you are saying? Are your words too mysterious for me to see through them? It would seem Tyr had hit a sore spot and fell even deeper into the pit that Loki had dug for him. I meant no disrespect, Odin, Enough. Get out of my sight before I use your life to give Baldur some company in hell. Go to the northern front and help Thor deal with those Jotuns. You can return after destroying Jotunheim. In other words, Odin had just banned Tyr from returning to Asgard for a very long time. This once again very hard punishment let many Aesir generals and commanders look at Odin with hidden dissatisfaction. Tyr had spoken the words hidden in their hearts and Odin had rejected them. Observing as a bystander, I could tell that Loki was intentionally sowing dissent. While he was supporting Odin on the surface, he was undermining the All-Father below the surface. Hod's body was then carried away by the guards to fulfill Odin's order. Tyr left as well, accompanied by two of Odin's personal guards. Odin himself removed the arrow from Baldur's head. With surprising strength, his bony old hand carefully grabbed the arrow and ripped it free from the head it was confined in. Opening his hand, he revealed the ornately crafted arrow. As they took a closer look at the arrow, all the Aesir present sucked in a long breath of air. That arrow was made by the Vanir. Its designs perfectly match those that their elites use. A random commander blurted out what they all wanted to say. They had all fallen for Loki's ploy. All the tracks were now set for a war between the Godkin. We will destroy those arrogant bastards, but first, I feel like someone is spying on us. To my great horror, a formless wave rushed out from Odin. This was clairvoyance magic. And with Odin having an innate understanding of it, he could potentially discover me. This was disastrous. If Odin discovered me, the whole plot would be exposed. I couldn't let that happen under any circumstances. The only thing that could save this situation was a decisive, but desperate move. I basically committed suicide. The sliver of my soul extinguished itself, turning into nothing but thin air and a whiff of energy. Even if Odin managed to pick that up, it would be untraceable. The memories gathered by this part of me turned into a flow of information that transcended time and space. They crashed into my main soul along with nearly unbearable pain from destroying a part of my soul. If I hadn't just lost my spiritual body, I would be rolling around on the ground screaming. After a few hours of mental screaming, the pain subsided. Thankfully, the amount of soul power lost was already replenished. Reforming my spiritual body was now only a question of time. My matters with Loki were also momentarily concluded and wouldn't need further attention until the war between the Godkin reached its later stages. Thus, I could once again focus on building my own forces. Because whoever won this war would probably not be too happy after noticing they were tricked into war. During my little excursion, my main body had finished the blueprint of the fire dragon. As of now, I could at most control 5 mythical beasts at the same time. Since I doubted I would get another mythical beast's corpse anytime soon, I decided to grow 5 fire dragon at the same time. Due to the powerful soul needed to support their power, the time they needed to grow naturally increased. 1 year was an awfully long time and might not be over before the war started to impact me. Granting Volsung the Fire Dragon's bloodline would give me 1 trump card, but some more would still be nice. What could I do to get a few more trump cards? Chapter 62, Trump Card Collection. I could think of a few things to quickly raise my strength. Most of these things were from my previous world and would bring great surprise to the people of this world. I'd never really thought of it before, but while the heavenly steel was an exquisite material, I actually had something better. My own body was an unending source of treasures. I had used the fruit as I was accustomed to, but the wood I was made of had been forgotten. My body could take attacks from Grand Duke level figures, and since it was organic, its conductivity for magic was vastly superior to heavenly steel. Using this material, I could create some things that would shake the world. First, I was planning to make some golems. They were one of the essential combat units in higher level wars. They didn't feel pain or fear and would keep fighting until their main core or rune was destroyed. The lowest combat golem would be made of ordinary iron, while the strong ones were made out of structin, a nearly indestructible metal. Using my own wood at my current level should allow me to create medial-grade combat golems. Their strength would roughly equal a Marquis Magus, although this was largely reliant on their strong defense. Making them in great numbers would sadly be impossible due to my body having only limited materials to give without leaving permanent damage. Using most of my branches, I created 100 such golems, burying them beneath the surface all around me. Next, I used the leftover wood to create as many weapons as possible and engraved them with magic enchantments. Taking advantage of the high magic conductivity, the weapons I made were all equipped with small abilities. Some blades could burst into fire, others could freeze all they touched. These blades were then distributed to all my subordinates. While this would not truly raise their own strength, it would allow them to fight people above their level. Then I faced a problem that had bothered me for a while. Whenever someone had a conflict with me, they could simply walk here and I would have to deal with them. I had wanted to keep them out, but stopping them with force would only have escalated matters. This reoccurring situation needed a firm but not a bloody solution. My approach, a barrier. With this, I could keep everyone below Grand Duke Magus out. Setting it up would require time and work, which I hadn't been able to get a hold of until now. Right now, I was relatively sure to be left alone by all the big players around me, and by the time I re-entered their focus, I would already be done. Raising a barrier required a core, pillars, and a source of energy. The core would naturally be my body, and the pillars could be substituted with subordinate trees connected to my roots. What followed were 3 weeks of agonizing concentration. I engraved countless runes, set up magic circuits and weaved each part of the barrier with a thread of pure magic. Pure magic didn't have an element and needed to be extracted very carefully, elongating the process of completing the barrier. However, I must admit, it wasn't all bad. Spending so much time on engraving and extract magic did wonders for my proficiency. I reckoned that if I were to fight my former self, I actually might stand a chance. Subsequently, I spent another month to install various little tricks and gimmicks. This was all in preparation for the ongoing war, though thankfully I had been left alone so far. Finally, I proceeded to work on the matter that held by far the most potential to become my absolute ace in the hole. My peculiar existence gave me a deep connection to nature. Thus, I could do things far beyond the idea of what humans believe to be the laws of nature. Just like my descendants could awaken a consciousness due to my genes, it should be possible for me to awaken consciousness within a normal tree. Admittedly, they couldn't become magic trees, but they would be able to both move and use magic. Since ancient times they were known as Ents, the guardians of the forests. Through giving consciousness to the trees around me, I could raise an army that would grow stronger at an incredible rate and would feel neither fear nor pain when defending me. Assured of the limitless potential these servants would possess, I began the creation of my first Ent. Sending my magic into a random nearby tree, I quickly found its spark of life. This was the spark that gave life to this tree, the reason why creating life was so incredibly difficult for many who tried. I simply needed to touch it with my magic and awaken the spirit inlaid deep within every spark of life. Once the spirit, also called pneuma, was awakened, a consciousness would form practically by itself. All it required was a slight touch. Reaching the spark of life, my magic easily penetrated the outer layer and made contact with the pneuma, only to be frantically expelled out of the spark of life. It didn't work? I failed? Chapter 63, There Lies Value in All Life. Failure. How was that possible? It felt like I was rejected. I tried again and again and again, only to be met with strong rejection every time. I must not be using enough magic, crank up the output, and everything will be fine. I sent a veritable flood of magic barreling past the outer layer, straight into the pneuma. The resistance flared up again, but was drowned by the mass of the magic I had sent. Success? An explosion. The tree was gone now. In its place were only charred remains and a hole, reminding of the tree that once stood here. Again. If you continue trying to force the issue, you will end up destroying the whole forest and still be unsuccessful. I advise you to stop and divert your efforts to something else. What was it with all the people appearing out of nowhere? Who was it this time, some god of nature who's mad I blew up some tree? Following the voice, I discovered a young man levitating next to one of my branches. At first, I just took a quick look at him, labeling him as ordinary. His aura was barely perceptible. But wait. I know that face. I took a closer look and discovered that I knew this person. Lord Abel, to what do I owe the pleasure of your presence? Ha ha ha, and why are you suddenly so polite? Last time I checked, even Aurelia wasn't treated with such respect when she came here. You must be joking, Lord Abel. How could I show someone I don't even know more respect than you? The only person who might deserve more respect would be the principal. Sorry, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. If you mean the whole reincarnation thing you went through, I know. You were the student back at my lecture about dragon bloodlines, died as a high mage due to exhausting your potential and became a tree. But you really don't know, huh? That's so comical. What do you mean by I don't know? You said you would show your principal more respect than me, right? Have you never met your principal in your former life? I've indeed never met the principal, but so what? Well, let me describe her to you. She wears blue, has blue hair, and her name is Aurelia. Then the one I met before. Was the principal you respect so much? Well, that was unfortunate. So let's just pretend this all never happened. Anyway, just don't attempt making another ent, you'll just waste trees. Why? Pneuma is not as simple as you might believe it to be. Touching it opens a connection between your consciousness and the pneuma, allowing it to look into your mind. Now you are a human reborn as a tree, bringing many benefits but also some inconveniences. You do not value life as you should, but instead treat it as an expendable resource. The pneuma in the tree felt that and rejected you. Simple as that. I don't understand. Why would I not value life? This is a problem that you should solve by yourself. I can't help you with that. Take this, you'll know when to use it. Dropping a small wooden plate, he was suddenly gone from my sight and perception in general. The only thing that proved I hadn't been hallucinating was a small disturbance in the space where he had been. I collected the wooden plate but couldn't find any use for it. Not that this was of much concern to me. As of now, the most crucial point was my inability to create ents. Whatever this valuing life business was, I couldn't figure it out. This was all too much for me. Suddenly knowing I've met two of the most powerful beings in all of existence. It would probably be best to just forget about all of this. I continued meditating on the issue of life for a few weeks until the war finally reached me. Loki paid me a visit and brought me up to date to the current situation. Essentially, things had played out roughly as follows. After the fiasco with Baldur, the Aesir had relaxed the pressure on the northern front and launched a massive offensive against the Vanir to the west. Thor and Odin together fought Frey, the Vanir Magus king, and nearly crippled him. Only when it looked like the Vanir were about to be exterminated did Odin suddenly pull back. Apparently, Freya had made a move. Though Loki was unwilling to tell me who exactly she was. After that, the Jotuns had broken through the Aesir's weakened defenses in the north. Valhalla was halfway destroyed and Tyr had been forced to retreat. Only when Odin and Thor rushed over could they push the Jotuns back. However, due to the constant pressure, the Aesir army was in no condition to continue fighting. Chapter 64, Thor's Secret. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to tell you, Thor is rushing over here this minute. He'll arrive tomorrow in the evening. You said what now? Thor is coming over. A King Magus is coming over and you're telling me like this? Don't worry, I will face him with you. He is a King Magus, he will wipe the floor with both of us. He actually isn't. Truly speaking, he can at most be considered a quasi-King Magus. And why is that? Thor is essentially a musclehead, making it impossible for him to become a King Magus anytime soon. Since I needed his trust, I decided to make a bet with some dwarves. The specifics are rather unpleasant and nearly cost me my head, but ultimately Mjolnir was made. Naturally, I had made sure some problems occurred, but with the lightning attraction abilities of his hammer and Odin's methods we managed to seal a lightning origin. Thus, Thor is only a King Magus as long as he holds Mjolnir. Without it, he can at most wield 5% of a King Magus power. 5%? I guess we can manage that. The problem though is that he has the hammer. Thor has a habit of resting a day before he challenges a powerful opponent. When he sleeps I just have to steal his hammer, simple as that. Well, then go get that hammer. Finally, he left. This guy was a serious pain to deal with. I felt like I never knew what he was thinking. Once night had fallen, Loki returned. I take it you have been successful? It went better than I had expected. He still believes I am his ally and even ate the poisonous food I gave him. Such a gullible fool. Do you not feel bad for doing this to him? He may be a gullible fool, but don't think he isn't a cold-blooded killer. He would kill someone on an impulse or less. To him, humans are akin to ants. If he's in a good mood, he ignores them. If he's in a bad mood, he will annihilate every single one he crosses. Awfully protective of the humans, are we now? It's not like I'm hiding it. A long while back, when I was still known as Loder, Odin, Heir, and I came across 2 trees, lying by the shore. They were dying and looked so pitiful to us, that we, in our youthful enthusiasm, decided to save them. However, we had yet to master our powers, and therefore we did too much. Heir awakened their consciousness, Odin connected them to the fate of this world and me. I gave them warmth and new life. You made all humans? Saying we made them is an overstatement. Heir merely awakened their consciousness, he didn't create it, it was already there. Odin connected them to fate, that made it possible for them to become a real species. I just rekindled the seed of life already within them, making it a little brighter than it was before. The amount of coincidence for all of us to have a power that could help in just the right place. Still, you took part in the act of creation. No wonder you feel protective of the humans. But shouldn't Odin feel so too? Odin's power is to read the fate of the world, changing it is not something he should have done. Up to this day, the curse of changing fate follows him and he just wants to get rid of any reminder. Just then a lightning storm appeared out of nowhere. The dark clouds had just manifested out of thin air, covering the sky wherever one would look. To the south, the epicenter of the storm was fast approaching, wreathed in descending lightning dragons, and announced by roaring thunderclaps. It would seem, Thor was about to arrive. As the epicenter came closer and closer, I finally caught a glimpse of this legendary King Magus. Long blonde hair, a ripped body, chest bared, and an aura of a warrior baptized by many bloody battles. The air of a true veteran warrior lingered around him. Only that he seemed somewhat awkward, opening and closing his right hand repeatedly as if trying to grip the air between his fingers. Chapter 65, Battle Against the King of Lightning. Loki, I know you are itching to avenge Baldur, but that is no reason to rush ahead and bring my hammer so I don't have to carry it. Loki, is he always this stupid? Welcome to my daily struggles. And this is a good day. He once gave the hammer to a giant while he took a nap, asking the giant to keep an eye on it. Then he came crying to me when the giant stole it. I really believe that he found a way to convert his brain into muscles. What are you talking about? Don't spill my embarrassing secrets. Now stop talking to the enemy and give me my hammer. This is painful to watch. Could he be any more oblivious? Look, Thor, I will make this very clear. I am not your friend and I brought upon Baldur's death. Now you too can die. Why did you tell him? You could have just stabbed him when he turned his back to you. I can't kill him in one blow, and if he got this close to me, he could kill me with one hit. And no matter how oblivious he is, when I stab him in the back, he will kill me. How dare you betray me? I'll kill both of you. Finally comprehending the situation, Thor flew into a rage. His eyes were emitting scary blue lightning, and looking into them was akin to gazing into an endless pool of blue electricity. The storm around him picked up and grew even more ferocious. Every move Thor made was accompanied by streaking lightning and thunder. He shot forward and threw a punch at Loki. Lightning snakes shot out alongside his punch, spearing for Loki. Crackling electricity filled the air. Loki backstepped and waved his hand, sending a barely perceptible ripple towards the lightning snakes. As the ripple came in contact with Thor's lightning, the lightning caught on fire and stopped heading for Loki. From the resulting cloud of flames, Thor emerged, unharmed, and continued his punch towards Loki. Due to Loki having stepped back, the punch merely grazed him. Loki somersaulted multiple times and once again faced Thor. During this first exchange between them, I had fully raised my barrier and cut our battlefield off from the rest of the world. Thor was so engrossed in throwing wild punches at Loki that he failed to notice his thunderstorm being separated from him. With every punch he threw, the lightning sent out diminished a little more. Both Loki and Thor were brute-forcing their power against each other. As they fought, both sides were rapidly depleting their magic power reserves. Then, after 3 hours, Loki's power began to sputter out. Thor immediately grasped this chance and summoned a giant lightning ball, preparing to throw it at Loki. My opportunity had finally come. A terrifying suction came from all the formation pillars around the barrier. The electricity gathered by Thor was dispersed and absorbed by the pillars. This sudden dispersal of his attack confounded Thor to the point where his reaction was delayed long enough for an arrow to pierce his chest. Since the beginning of the battle, Volsung had been waiting with a bow and arrow. A bow made of my wood coupled with the strength of a Grand Duke fighter easily generated enough force to wound Thor. Raging profusely, Thor's body started to exude large quantities of electricity, wanting to blast the arrow into nothingness. However, the arrow was also made of my wood and clustered full of lightning sealing runes. No matter how much electricity Thor pumped into the arrow, it would only drain his own power. In his death throes wave after wave of dazzling lightning arcs erupted from his body, charring the ground black. Then, it ended. A rather pathetic death for a King Magus. Do not think you actually defeated a King Magus just now. Without his hammer, he was already weakened, and since he is a muscle head, he didn't realize you trapping him. On top of that, you seem to be extraordinarily well prepared to deal with lightning. I was preparing to brag about my meticulous preparation in regard to countering Thor's power, but a sudden spike in energy from the southwest interrupted. Stretching my perception, I discovered a flash shooting straight for my location. Before I could react, my barrier was shattered in an instant. The flash revealed itself to be a spear. It had gone straight through Loki's shoulder and pinned him to the ground.